Grace and peace, mic check.
Mic check 7.
As we enter. Things move around a bit. If you can hear us, type a 7. And we'll begin shortly. Don't forget to give a thumbs up. Shalom to all. Mic check 7. If you can hear us, Sister Carice.
Mic check 7. Hear you, Brother Sean, loud and clear.
Yes, Javid, you're loud and clear, same way. Mess up and one love as we enter. Welcome to all. Just type in a 7 if you can hear me. Before we move on, I always like to do that microphone check for the people. Hello, Sister Andrea. Can you hear us? Type in a 7. Bless up, Sister Paris. Bless up, Andrea. All right. One love to all. Grace and peace. Brother Sean here and Brother Javid on another live session with the Zion Assembly of John Jehoshua as we continue to reveal the Most High's Almanac. Shalom to you, Brother Javid.
Shalom, Brother Sean, all the brethren and sisters.
Bless up, brothers and sisters, as you tune in. Mama Greg, I know we'll be tuning in. Sister Carice, Sister Alma, Auntie Alma, Sister Andrea, and as we move through, people will jump in. As always, all praise, glory, and honor to Jah, Yah, our Father, and His only begotten Son, Jehoshua the Messiah, the Nazarite that died for our sins that we may have eternal life. Also known in the world as Yehoshua, Yahusha, Yahawashai, Yahshua, Yeshua, Jesus, Joshua the Messiah, HaMashiach the Christ. All glory to the Father and Son.
Praise Jah.
Today's date is the 21st day of the 12th month of Adar for the year 6225 from origination, equivalent to January 28th at evening, going through to January 29th, 2026. Here we are as we move. Again, here we are here. The 21st, a reminder that the scripture year always begins on the first day of the week, always ends on the seventh day of the week, and the equinoxes and solstices are the middle, of which you'll get a lot of information about today. As we get into this topic here, ABIB equals February. Make sure you check out part 1 that deals with the ABIB and the barley harvest, part 1A actually. And then you go to part 2B or 1B of 4, the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, the early and latter rains. We covered those topics greatly that prove that the scripture year does begin in February. And as we look at things, again, a reminder, looking at how we're going to speak about today, how the equinoxes and solstices are the middle of the true scriptural seasons. And what we covered, in those last 2 episodes is that we showed clearly that the winter, the latter rains, the barley, and the wheat first fruits harvest all began in Abib, which is equivalent to February, marking the rainy season, as you see here, and the barley and wheat first fruits as it goes to the 3rd month of spring, which is in April. And then the summer and fruits, vegetable, the full fruits, and the green harvest coming in for early summer. And then seed time in threshing and the vintage, and also preparing to sow for the next year. And that occurs in late October. We prove these things, and I'm just going over them very, very quickly. And also establishing the early rains begin in November, and that's the winter rains, and that's when the barley and the wheat are sowed, and when the sowing takes place. So, with this information here, what we've been proving over and over and over again, without a shadow of a doubt, that the true scriptural year begins in February, according to your holy scriptures, according to the climate and land and the summer and rainy seasons in Israel, perfectly. Cannot be gainsaid by the holy scriptures. And I know people want to know how we know which exact day, and we've talked about that with the 28-year cycle. But hang on to the next couple of parts. We'll definitely let you know why we choose. And I think this year it's February 7th. It's not that we choose; it's a part of a cycle. And so why we're starting it this year at that time period, and then we'll even explain throughout the years how it's always in early February. For the beginning of ABIB, and that the barley harvest or the waving of the sheaf, bringing forth the first fruits of the waving of the sheaf, is late February, and sometimes it could just touch on early March.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add, Brother Javid?
No, we can continue to flow on.
And shalom to all who are joining us. Who do we have
Shalom.
here? Yes, bless up, Olivia. Shalom to you as well. Hey, bless up, Brother John.
Shalom.
Yes, family's also tuning in. One love to you and all. So, all right, we're going to now get into part 2A of 4, the true solar seasons, as we get into this topic. And many people have, kind of the Zion Assembly have heard about it, but we're going to go into a little bit more in depth today. Go ahead, Brother Javid.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years."
So we see that they're for signs, seasons, days, and years. Now, there's a lot of talk, when it comes to the word seasons, because it means moed or moedim, and it can mean appointed time. It can refer to the festivals. It can refer to times when Moses was judging the people. Definitely refers to the seasons of the year. I mean, when some people try to just, kind of overlook that aspect of it, it's like, we know that the sun, moon, and stars are great signs of the different seasons, rainy seasons, winter seasons, summer seasons, autumn seasons. The sun and moon and stars give us this, help and understanding where they are. So when people try to disclude this word here, seasons, as only referring to the festivals, that's incorrect, because again, this word here has multiple meanings. And when Jah was doing this in the beginning, he wasn't talking about the festivals. He was talking about these things for all mankind to use. When he speaks about his holy festivals, he's very specific.
That's right.
So here's these seasons, that we can kind of clearly see when Noah comes out of the ark. I mean, you let me know. The sun, moon, and stars operate with these seasons.
Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease.
So we can clearly see these seasons, and we speak about it all the time. As you can see, seed time, harvest, cold, heat, summer, winter, day, night. All of these things are attached to the sun, moon, and stars, and based upon the standard of the weekly cycle, because the weekly cycle, day one, came before the sun, moon, and stars were created. So when people with the Enoch calendar or Jubilee calendar want to start it in the middle of the week, or on day 4 when the sun, moon, and stars were created, they're just overlooking a very simple count that the Father was making. He started day 1, 2, 3, and 4. He didn't start and reset anything on day 4, because he continues on talking about 5, 6, and of course the Holy Sabbath. And that Holy Sabbath is not based upon any astronomical event, but by the Most High separating and sanctifying that day of the week and making it perpetual. And it has nothing with the sun, moon, and stars, only in a sense, of course, when evening comes, when the sun sets, and the sun, moon, the moon and stars are in nighttime. That's a day is over and another day is beginning. But in terms of just looking at the sun to say, hey, you can look at the sun and say, boy, this is the Sabbath. No, you'd have to count days. So
Mhm.
this is, important for us to understand, because many people who put forth the Enoch calendar, day 4 is where they started from. And again, that's ignoring the Most High's holy count, because that count is very holy and it's sanctified.
That's right.
And we can see here as well, there's no mention, because like I said, when it comes to the Father's things, his things are holy. He sanctified the holy Sabbath, the week, so he set that standard in motion. And as we know, keep the Sabbath holy. It's a holy thing. We know that his months he even considers holy as well. And there's no mention of months in this section, where people will try to say, hey, you know what? The moon is for months. But we're not given that command in the Torah or anywhere in the Tanakh or of the other writings. Yes, we read about these words, new moon or and whatnot. But the Most High never told, anyone what part of the moon to look at. And when he regave his calendar and his almanac to Moses and Aaron, there was nothing about lunar cycles or even solar cycles, in the sense of, hey, you see where the position of the sun is here or whatnot. Now, I know that they knew about different seasons, but the Most High was establishing something holy. And so when he made that day holy, that first day of the month, the first day of the year, I think it's in Exodus, Exodus maybe 3 or 4, probably a little bit past that, after the Most High gives his name. And again, these things are holy. The festivals are holy. They're in Leviticus chapter 23, as mentioned, as being holy convocations, days he separated. This is what we see here in the scriptures. So we don't deal with lunar cycles at all, nor or lunar Sabbaths, and we do and can tackle the topic of, should moon mean month or moon mean lunar cycles. You can look on our channel and just type in moon or month in the search, and it'll come up, and we'll definitely be covering that this year as well. The Most High spare our lives. So there's no mention of these things. But here's the problem. When you read other books like Enoch and Jubilee, which have some mentionings of certain truths of scripture, of the scriptural calendar, there's also a lot of things that have been added to and put on. And you can kind of clearly see this when it comes to the book of Jubilees. Although, they talk about the proper count of Jubilees. They emphasize that you shouldn't be using a lunar calendar in Jubilees chapter 6, and that's good. And the mentioning of 364 days as being a complete common year, those things are valid. But when it comes to other things, according even to the scriptural understanding, there's some things that are off. And I want to show you right off the bat where they go off with this understanding. You want to add anything here, brother, before we move on?
I think it's very clear. Sister Andrea points out to us those scriptures are very clear, and yes, they are.
Mm-hmm. Very clear. These are complementary scriptures. I mean, we're seeing right in Genesis, the whole understanding. It says to divide the day from the night. You have day and night here. It'll be for signs, and we know that the sun, moon, and star are signs for seasons. Definitely, when the sun's out, it's hotter, and when it's colder, and the moon is out, understanding the seasons very clearly, you can see, and for years. And so, when from one spring to another, and all of this understanding, and also when it comes to the 28-year cycle. The sun is a great sign for that as well. And that 28-year cycle is used by in the Gregorian and Julian understanding, but they took those things from the Most High's 28-year cycle, which is based upon the 7-day weekly cycle, of which the sun, moon, and stars work within it and synchronize. It's like the 7-day weekly cycle is the watch and the hands and all the other gears, are like the sun, moon, and stars, and they're operating within just 7-day weekly cycle, his 28-year cycle, 700-year cycle, and eventually, of course, the 7,000-year cycle.
That's right.
But take a look here, what's going on in Jubilees. And you can just read it how it is, 'cause I didn't change anything, so
All right. Jubilees chapter 2, verse 8. And on the 4th day, he created the sun and the moon and the stars, and set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon all the earth, and to rule over the day and the night, and divide the light from the darkness.
I mean, so when we look at this verse, you can almost clearly see. It's almost like an exact word for word, let them, right? It doesn't say, what the sun's supposed to do in particular. We know that it's one of the greater signs. It doesn't say let them, if it's the stars that deal with the months or the moon. But again, this wording here in Genesis 1:14 is pretty much up to par. But this is what it comes down to: adding to the Most High's words. Take note.
Verse 9. And Jah appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for jubilees, and for all seasons of years.
So you see something different now. Now, some people might, when they approach this, they say, hey, you're getting more insight onto what the Most High is saying. But we see that the Most High never mentioned anything about Sabbaths in Genesis 1, right? He never mentioned anything about months. He never mentioned anything about feasts, although people will try to say that word seasons means feasts. And that's, that argument, of course, we don't agree, and it can easily be disproven. And, the Most High's, it's for years and Sabbath of years, because, 1 year leads to 7 Sabbaths of year. That's good. And Jubilee years multiplies 7 Sabbath of years to be 49. And of course, all seasons of the years. We know these certain things, but again, this is an addition. It says here Sabbath, and like I said, unless you're counting sunlights, 7 sunlights or 6 sunlights or sunsets or whatever, and you get to the 7th, okay, I can see how counting that, because the sun is a part of every day, and that gives you the Sabbath. But you still have to count, and it's not like the sun is in a special position to say this day is holy. It's the Most High that sanctifies that day. And the same thing with his months and feasts and years. Does the sun move throughout the year? Of course it does, and have its, specific positions when it's moving, throughout the seasons. That's right. But when it comes to the holy months that are marked by the Most High, you don't look at the sun to say, all right, from this day to the 20th of that sun, and pick a sun. And it doesn't work that day. You have to count it from the beginning of time like we do. And that's where, time begins. And if you don't use the beginning, then you have no foundation. And again, lastly, for feasts, how do you know the sun is for feasts? I mean, the sun could probably only help you in regards to understanding maybe what season it is. If you know the solar cycles and whatnot, that can help, because knowing it, about solar spring could definitely help. But it can't tell you and pinpoint the exact feast day. And that's what I mean by these things. The Most High pinpoints how long a month is, when it begins, what day of the week it begins on, his 7-day Sabbath, his festivals, what day of the week they will always begin on, and their durations. And of course, when it comes to the years, that has no basis upon the sun, moon, or stars at all for any of Jah's ordained holy festivals.
That's right. See, the problem that many people have when they read books like this is, as we can see, verse 8 is a true statement, and we can verify that statement as we just did going back to Genesis. But then when you get to verse 9 here, you can see that it's pointing out that the sun has something to do with making Sabbaths and months and feasts, and we know that that's not true.
No.
And you have to apply discernment. And because these book might make a couple of true statements, they accept everything that they read in these books as true, and it's not true, because verse 9 is not true. And
right.
We see that in scriptures. And so if you don't have a good foundation of scriptures and apply wisdom and discernment, you may be led astray into other things that are erroneous written in these books, just because they might have a few factual and truthful remarks. It doesn't mean that the entire thing is true.
That's right. Grace and peace, Caroline, Zion of Jah Worship, DJT. Do you know what DJT means, Brother Javed?
No, I'm not sure what they're referring to.
I don't know what DJT means. You can maybe type it in and help us out, and we'll just continue move along and get back to your comment. So again, looking at other calendars, they may have some information, but then there's other information that can be, misleading. Here we have in the Apocrypha a good understanding of all what I'm talking about.
Ecclesiasticus, chapter 33, verse 7. Why doth one day excel another, when as all the light of every day in the year is of the sun? By the knowledge of Jah, they were distinguished, and he altered seasons and feasts. Some of them hath he made high days, and hallowed them, and some of them hath he made ordinary days.
Whoops, sorry. So what you see here in these scriptures, they were distinguished, by his knowledge. They
Mm,
weren't dictated by, the sun, moon, and stars. He says right here, why does one day excel above another for the light of every daylight period, and every day is of the sun, and we know that. But
that's
it's the
right.
Most High that takes one of those days, and this is what I mean by the Most High's calendar. Like, it's a good solar aspect to look at seasons, but to use the solar or the sun for actual feasts as a marker of some type, in terms of the day, the exact day, because that's what it comes down to. Day is very important. You don't get the right day, like the Sabbath, you're off the mark. And so, again, we see that just separating days, they're distinguished by his knowledge. He's the one who does the seasons and the feasts. So he's, attaching these importances to these things and making certain seasons. And notice here it says seasons and feasts. And
Hmm.
seasons again means moedim and everything, and it only means feasts. He'd be saying he altered feasts and feasts. But we know that this season is referring to when those feasts are in. So the moedim is seasons of when you're supposed to keep the holy days. Those are a proper season. You have to do it in the proper spring, early spring, not in mid spring or even getting into later spring, like what everybody says. That's when spring begins at the equinox. No, and lastly, right here, it lets you know again simply, he made some high days and hallowed them, and some others he made ordinary days. So I mean, when he made these days special by what? By us reading about these in the scripture, by him
That's
giving
right.
these commandments to Moses. It wasn't any type of, even with the manna, when the Most High gave the manna, that wasn't attached to any lunar cycles or anything of that nature. And again, the Most High never pointed to no lunar cycle. And I know people know this, even people who follow a lunar calendar, and use lunar months and stuff like that. They know there's no real command, but this is how, kind of looking at the other new moons, how they try to come together with things.
And these verses are good to read because it's almost like asking the question, why are some days holy and some days are not? Right? The light of the sun, moon, and stars has no play when it comes to days being holy.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 8, we see that the knowledge of Jah's the one that ordains and distinguishes certain days, and he makes those days holy. So if he says that the 7th day is holy, then you count every 7 days, and that day is holy. Has
That's right.
nothing to do with the sun, moon, or stars in making any days that are holy. So if
That's
you
right.
believe in Jah's words, you have to believe that he says if the 7th day is holy, then it's holy. And you count every 7 days and number those days. And this is how Jah's calendar operates. It's by counting and numbering and following the example that Jah set for us to
Yes.
follow, not by
Right.
looking up into the sky and saying, oh, well, the sun's down and that day is holy, or by the phases of the moon. There's nothing like that in the scriptures. And many brothers and sisters have been deceived into believing that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well said, brother. And I mean, getting back to what you're saying quickly is like, their Genesis gives us the foundation of time. And I mean, it's right there. And like you said, the Most High gave an example. So, this is why we find that many people deviate from not having the year start on the first day of the weekly cycle, as it is in the scriptures. And that's a certain pattern of weeks.
That's right. The Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 17. For he had given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know how the world was made, and the operation of the elements, the beginning, ending, and midst of the times, the alterations of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons, the circuits of years, and the position of stars.
So, wow, a lot of information in here. And kind of
Mhm.
when we're talking about the Most High's almanac, I just want to let you know it's related to a lot of things that you see here. And just the things that are knowing how the world was made, creation, understanding that there was no formed globe, or even if you believe in the plain earth, that wasn't formed on day one. The earth was just earth material submerged in water. And so having a good understanding of how things came in creation, and creation week is very important, shouldn't be overlooked. And this is why there's a lot of lies regarding creation, whether it's the gap theory or whether there's human beings before Adam and Eve that people teach, or that each day was 1,000 years. Some people teach that each day was 1,000,000 years and eons, and all kind of different things that, uh, go against the clean testimony of what we read in Genesis. And
Mm-hmm.
this seems to be, the problem. It's maybe the Most High's word is too simple, but the simplicity of His word makes your imagination expand in a more righteous way, rather than looking for some type of things He's not saying. And I mean, I can't believe people talk about, Lilith and another wife, and people before Adam, and because they don't know where Cain got his wife, and all kind of
Mm-hmm.
silly things, when the word is very clear and understanding. And of course, using your wisdom, that the Most High gave us, you can see these things. But again, the beginning and in midst of the times, something that we focus on a lot. One of the main things that we talk about, not just when the feasts should be kept, but it's chronology. And chronology is the counting of time, right? Measuring time,
Mm-hmm.
chronos. If you have a chrono watch, and if you know what I mean, it's time, it's measuring. And so we take great detail into measuring time from the beginning of creation, going all through, understanding these cycles that are there, 28-year cycles, 7-year cycles. And when you know these cycles and that they don't change, that allows you to know that even the dates that the Gregorian calendar uses, they're going to stay static on the Most High's calendar. And this is why we know how, when to keep the festivals on the Gregorian calendar, because they have to use just things, and gives everybody else a mark out there. Otherwise, Jazz Almanac doesn't really need the Gregorian calendar, but in order to communicate with people, we have to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this understanding of chronology, it's deep, and many people take up upon these things and have certain different understandings. Some are close, numbers are different. So that lets us know the beginning, the midst, and the ends of the time. And of course, many people think that the end times is within 10 years upon us, and so be it. That's how they feel. But from our understanding, it doesn't work that way. And then it says here about the alterations and turning of the sun. We don't know. We don't believe in no globe business, and that way. We don't believe that the earth does any spinning or moving, because in the scriptures you don't see where the earth is, kind of given any type of command or thing for timekeeping. When the Most High said, "Let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years," and He's talking about the sun, moon, and stars, they are supposed to be that marker, not the sun just sitting there and the move. The earth doing some type of movement. That's anti-scriptural, right? And you don't see anything in that. But nonetheless, I know it's a big topic for people, and knowing that the sun moves is going to be different than the solar system. And leads again to understanding the true changes of the seasons. Now, don't get me wrong, the equinoxes and solstices that we say are not the beginning of the season in the middle, they show some signs. It's like the solstice, summer solstice is the longest daylight, the winter solstice is the longest night. You have your equal day and nights, on most of the world, even though it's almost equal day and night all through the year on the equator countries. But people don't want to talk about that. They want to like, ooh, it's 12 hours everywhere, when for all year it's 12 hours around the equator, and the Caribbean and all of that, just off minutes. So we understand these things. And then again, talking about circuits of years, circuit cycle, this is what you have to know: 28-year cycle, Jubilee cycles. So, and the position of the stars, obviously knowing about the elements. And we don't get into the position of the stars or anything of that nature, but knowing Jazz Almanac and knowing the 20-year cycle, if one of us wanted to kind of get into that and make it, show some type of appearance of cycles, we could, and Babylon keeps track of a lot of astronomical records. They just tell you false beginnings and startings. And so, it wouldn't be hard, but we don't focus on that at all, because, that's not a part of just holy days.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the calendar that we use is based upon a globe with an imaginary equator it's imaginary line by definition. Google it now and it'll tell you it's an imaginary line. And they talk about a celestial sphere. So it's not even just a globe on Earth, that the stars and the sun, moon, stars, they rotate around, they're in a sphere place as well, but it doesn't work that way. And I know it's a big deal in the world. And then they put their maps with north at the top. All of this information, I'm not telling you these things because trying to be different and there's some hidden stuff. All of these things contribute to them distorting time. You distort the whole mechanism of how the sun, moon, and stars work, and then messes up things. And then when we come on the scene and say, hey, we're not dealing with equinoxes and solstices, people always trying to quote Genesis 1 on us and saying it says right there you got to use them, not knowing that we understand and use them, but we don't use them in the corrupted way that the world does. And we learn from the Most High Jah by knowing his seasons, and then again he can show us many other things. So this stuff is all, folly here when it comes to these things. It leads to a lot more folly with, like I said, the equinoxes as worldwide, in these modern times. But before the 1500s, I'm telling you, and even still today, on the Julian calendar that's been around for, almost 1,500 years, they, understood certain things, that these were the middle. And so there's a lot of great deception. And this is why we believe that, getting a little bit of understanding, in this area about how the earth and the realm of this earth really works. So the earth is like a realm. That's it. We're inside something that's a realm. And, I'm not trying to say, all the flat earth talk or anything. I'm using these kind of diagrams here just to say that, see a little bit of the difference of really what's going on here, because, they're using, when it says, let the earth remain seed time harvest, the other side of things, they're saying, hey, that means seed time is the autumn equinox, harvest is the vernal equinox, winter is the winter solstice, and summer relates to the summer solstice. And those things are not true. But this is what the general public has been taught for the last 600 years or even more. And this doesn't work that way. I'm not trying to say that the equinoxes and solstices don't exist. They do, but they were never these put upon Jah's things as identifying the beginning of seasons with the equinoxes and solstices. And this is the whole premise. And this is why we keep kind of saying it, because it's very important to understand this, because I've had people come, and, on my comment section lately, and, quite knowledgeable about calendars and spilling out the Jewish calendar and how it works. And they think my thing is completely skewed. It doesn't make no sense. And, I have to reply to them and just say, basically, well, then we did our job. Right? Because it's not going to make sense if you're in the world and you're into lunar months, you're into the equinoxes at the beginning of the seasons. Of course, our things, it's going to be absurd. And rightly so, because, that's how the truth is going to be coming out a little bit more. It may sound absurd, but just think about it. We've been handed these things, for all these long times. I keep talking about hundreds of years and centuries. And now we have another way to look at it properly from a scriptural point of view. I think it's worthy of a look and investigating greatly, because it seems like the Enoch and the Zadok calendar and all these other calendars and Jubilee calendars are trying to hijack Jah's things. And, we know they can't do it, but it's an attempt, and it's causing great confusion.
That's right. And when you're seeing these things, especially those diagrams, which are false, we can see why in Ecclesiasticus and Solomon, where he said the importance of knowing how the world was made, because that's the foundation in Genesis to give us the understanding of these things. And if you don't believe in that, then you're going to go off in how the world was made and believe in a solar system and a globe and all the things that the heathenistic Gentiles have put forth as lies into the world, because they're the ones responsible for putting these things forth. And the ancient world knew many things that Jah had given to the children of Israel. But once the Gentiles came, they flipped and turned everything upside down, and now the whole world believes in what they've taught. And we're going to put things back straight, just how Jah put it through the scriptures, and show our brothers and sisters the true knowledge that Jah put forth in the word of Jah.
That's right, brother. Just looking at this diagram, I mean, just look at the position of the sun in this diagram. This is where you see the whole difference, right? Just look at the sun is supposed to be the center in their things. It's a sun-centered, called heliocentrism, centric or heliocentricity, and it's moving around the sun. And then we have here a bigger earth where the sun is moving around the earth. I mean, when you look at that stuff in the scriptures, It's very evident. And I know you're fighting Goliath out here. Talking this kind of talk out there makes no sense. And I've had people who are very kind even comment recently. Is like they said, "Hey, I remember in one point of your video you mentioned something about the sun, moon, and stars," and like they said, "I've always been taught in the globe, you know what I mean, and the solar system. You know, why did I say that?" And I just told them that to check a video because you can't, kind of do it in words. But that's the effect that these things have had, and even us as we came into this knowledge, we grew up thinking about the globe and all of that, and then I remember Brother Javid and I probably went through our different little, it's like we did. It's almost like we didn't tell each other that we were studying these things, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
and then when we found out, because like it was mind-boggling, and then it kind of challenged what you knew, and again, this is what this thing is all about. And I pray that the Most High strengthen you on your journey. You do your personal research, and compare what we say and to scriptures, and use your own wisdom, because I know a lot of people have their own wisdom too, to not just compare, but you could probably add to this information greatly.
Hmm. And we have to be patient with people because we've all been lied to and deceived, and Satan deceives the whole world. In Revelation 12:9, it says that. But the truth sounds strange to those who believe lies. And so when you don't know the truth, it sounds strange to you when you hear it, because like Brother Shaw was saying, that person, that's all they knew, the earth being a globe and being solar centered. And so these things will sound strange when they hear us say these things. But now if you bring it back to the word of Jah, we have something that can't be moved, and you're going to have to either believe it or not.
That's right. You can keep talking, as we talk about maps, as you see, we're not even going to get there, but we know how the map is supposed to be situated, that Israel, the land of Israel, is where it is. When people try to say that Israel and Abraham came from, from Cape Town, and went all the way up to, all this whole journey up to Egypt, when, again, because they view south as the top, all of that is folly. And again, once you know certain understandings, east is at the top according to your scripture, you see a map like this and you get greater understanding. Mm. Yeah, a good map to let you see how things are and where Zion is. It's not down here. It's not, you can say that the Middle Earth is a part of Africa land, but to say it's in the heart of Africa, that no, it wasn't there that way. It's, even though that's still Africa, but you know what I mean, right, Brother Javid?
Yes. Daniel 2, verse 20. Blessed be the name of Jah forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and the seasons.
So remember that. Again, he has this wisdom for all understandings. Now, when we get into this, it's good to have a great understanding of the different types of seasons in the world. And you're going to get hopefully you may know of these things, but even get it more thorough. You have the scriptural seasons that we profess. You have the solar seasons, you have the meteorological seasons, and you have the astronomical seasons. These are the different types of seasons. And there might be other small ones for various countries, but the whole world basically, would recognize these things. We're showing you the scriptural seasons. And when we see on the side here, the beginnings of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, we see with the scriptural season, early February, early May, early August, early November. And you'll see also with solar seasons, which are scientific and everything else, these three are the main seasons. This is the least known. Again, solar seasons they match up perfectly with Jah seasons. Early, as you can see. When it comes to meteorological seasons, they do things by the month. So March 1st will always be, their spring. No matter what that happens or anything, June 1st, September 1st, December 1st. When it comes to astronomical seasons, which people generally kind of say, oh, this is the first, day of summer, winter, and it's on your news and everything. That's, astronomical, dealing with the vernal equinox. 3 weeks into March, usually the 20 or 21st, it can move around a bit. The same with the summer solstice, longest day of the year. The same with the equinox here, the autumn equinox, and the December winter solstice. These are the beginning of the season. So you can see there's a difference. You have March 21st, and that's different from early February. It's almost, you would almost say it's almost 45 days, at times when you look at 45 to 46 days. And, that's important. It's a difference, in the beginning. And even we have March here with the meteorological seasons. Brother, you want to read the solar, if you can see that?
Yeah. Solar seasons. Solar seasons refer to divisions of the year based purely on the amount of daylight or the sun's position. Distinct from standard astronomical seasons like solstices and equinoxes or fixed meteorological seasons, they often align with traditional pagan festivals like Imbolc or Beltane and focus on periods of fastest light change, maximum light, and least light. The sun also has its.
Hey, don't worry about that. Yeah, the least light of the winter.
Mhm.
So again, you see, there's a little bit of a difference. Meteorological. We have astronomical and the solar. That's the difference here.
Mhm.
We'll learn a little bit more. So let's again look at these key differences between the solar, astronomical, and meteorological. It's very important because when you're watching the news, that's what they're going to be talking about. So they're usually going to be telling you about it's meteorological spring, meteorological that, or astronomical. Very rarely, although it's becoming more popular, do they mention solar seasons. And here's the
That's
key
right.
differences again.
And out of these three different seasons, solar is the least spoken about, yet it's the most accurate of the three. And the other two are more spoken about, and they're the most furthest away from the truth.
That's right, brother. That's right. Well, because it's connected to Jah things, so it's no wonder that they minimize that truth because many people haven't heard about it.
Astronomical seasons, defined by Earth's tilt and orbit in the solstices and equinoxes, marking the longest and shortest days and equal day and night, but these dates shift slightly. Meteorological seasons, fixed 3-month periods, example December to February for winter, used for consistent climate records, lagging behind solar changes due to water's heat capacity. Solar seasons, pagan and traditional, align with cross-quarter days, example November 1st for winter start, February 1st for spring start, earlier than astronomical seasons.
Ah, see, you're getting some information. When they say pagan and traditional, trust me, everything before Christianity came on the scene, they would call pagan and traditional. You understand? And we know we don't follow traditions of men, and we know pagans are kind of into worshiping nature, but they understood these things very clearly. And so when they're talking about, and we're going to learn a bit about cross-quarter days, when they're talking about the beginning November, the 1st for winter, February the 1st for spring, you notice it says it's earlier than the astronomical seasons. It doesn't mean that the astronomical seasons weren't always there or the markers of the equinoxes, but before it became profound. And when the Gregorian calendar came in, this is where the astronomical seasons started to get a lot of momentum coming through. Although they were there, they were recognized by the Egyptians and the Babylonians, and that pagan worship was coming from there. However, there was a good understanding of the solar seasons as being the true seasons, where the astronomical seasons were the midpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get a little video of just, a small explanation about astronomical and meteorological seasons.
All right.
Welcome to a new season, meteorologically speaking, but what's the difference? We take you to outer space and we start with astronomical seasons because after all, that's probably the one that you're most familiar with, the one that you learned in school. We know that astronomical winter began with the winter solstice, marking the day with the shortest amount of daylight of the year, and also marking the time when the solar energy is the greatest in the southern hemisphere, not to be confused with the north. We know that that's astronomical, but what else do we know? Well, we know that they both start and end with the two equinoxes and the two solstices. But did you know that in astronomical seasons, they're not exactly 3 months in length? That's because they are actually variations in date. Bring in our new best friend, the meteorological seasons, which always begin on the first of the month, always end on the last day of the month, and they are always 3-month periods. And that's because there's no variation in date. In other words, at a side-by-side comparison, look at how much cleaner and easier it is to look at the meteorological seasons. Remember, an astronomical winter, even though the winter solstice is on December 21st, there are some years where it may vary. But in meteorological, there's no change, and it's always the same every single year. Boy, I wish everything in meteorology were that simple.
All right. Now, this is what I want you to really take note to, because remember, I was talking about all of this stuff about, the solar system and everything. But you notice when these guys are talking about what makes their seasons, right? They'll always tell you, where is it here? Astronomical seasons, right here. Defined by what? The Earth's tilt and orbit. So when I was talking about that, kind of the differences of the solar system as opposed to Jah's earthly realm, it's, look at already, these are the wrong beginning of seasons, and it's defined by also the wrong solar system. And this is what I'm trying to, want you to make this connection when you start to look at things, that it's always going to be. So watch for the theme of astronomy. When you're going to see even other videos, they're always going to say, oh, the astronomical seasons are the tilt and the earth and this and that, and show the diagrams. But when they talk about solar seasons, it has nothing to do with no tilt or anything of that nature.
Yes, good point. Good point.
All right. So, hopefully you got a good idea about, the astronomical seasons. And, these are them right here on your screen. We put them where they rightly should be in the middle, but still the mid-spring equinox during March, summer solstice during June, autumn equinox, and winter solstice. And remember, they're usually around the 20th to the 22nd of these months. And that's good for you to know and understand. 3 weeks usually into the month. And remember, meteorological seasons, March would be the beginning. March, let's say March 1st would be the beginning of meteorological spring. June, September, and December, they're all the beginning of meteorological spring. But astronomical spring is the dates within those months.
Yes, got it.
All right, go ahead, brother.
Arguments for ABIB, equivalent to February as the start of spring, rather than the March equinox, rely on an understanding of scriptural cycles, and some climatology along with solar-based evidence that marks the true warming trend rather than the astronomical midpoint. ABIB equal to February often brings noticeable daylight increases, early blooming, and the official start of spring in many cultural calendars, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. Here are some insightful reasons to help you to see that ABIB is equivalent to February is the beginning of spring.
All right. So one last thing, notice again, rather than the astronomical midpoint, right? Continuing.
Significant daylight gains. By early February, there's a very noticeable increase in day length, signaling the sun's return to the Northern Hemisphere, even if temperatures haven't fully caught up yet.
Notice that the temperatures haven't fully caught up yet. So again, it's looking at the sun, because temperatures, you could have a cold beginning of spring.
That's right. Because it's still part of the winter season.
That's right.
Ecological signs and phenology. Nature often signals spring in February with the early budding of certain trees, early blooms like crocus and snowdrops appearing, and birds beginning to sing and mate.
So even when it comes to this point here, these are different types of flowers, right? When they're appearing, snowdrops, they could also appear during snow time. And I like when Brother Javed said, remember that the winter season is 6 months long. The first 3 months of it are the early rains, what we call the cold winter. And the last 3 months, which is the beginning of the year, February to April, we consider as spring, but it's also part of the winter rainy season. So it's always good to know that spring doesn't mean no rain at all. And this is when I want you to look for this information when you're out there in wherever you are. the birds are singing. It's not the baby birds are out yet. Just the adults are coming out there. They're looking for their mates. They're getting ready to see what's going on. Even as they start to do that in February, this time period goes on, and they mate and they're making nests. And then you'll see, of course, by mid-spring and even April, that's when you get a lot of the baby birds coming out and a little bit more of the chirping sound. But if you listen to these things, you will see them. If you look for the sun and see the increase, you're going to see it. And it's going to be quite, profound. Almost a month, in the month, almost 1 hour of increase. So it's good to know, again, these early beginnings. It's not when things pop out, but the birds are beginning to sing. They've mated, but it doesn't. Babies are born yet. You understand? It's just like how sleep can go on as well. They'll be in the womb during these times of the mother, and as things go on, she's lactating and getting ready for milk, and then in March and April, that's when these lambs are born. But the early growth is in the womb in the darkness, just like plants. You might not see them, especially if we're in Toronto and everything, but the roots are growing down. The plants grow the roots first, and then they start to pop out slowly if you're paying attention.
That's right. Cultural and seasonal calendars. Many traditions, such as Gaelic festivals like Imbolc, celebrated from February 1st to the 2nd, and older traditional solar calendars mark February as the beginning of spring quarter, or the growing season. The equinox is the midpoint. The March equinox actually marks the middle of spring and not the beginning. ABIB is equivalent to February, is the period from the increase of the lowest temperatures to the maximum in summer heat 6 months later in July. Agricultural timing. Farmers have traditionally viewed February as the time when the ground begins to wake up and preparations for sowing begin, making it functionally the start of the farming year. The sun on the skin. By middle of February, the angle of the sun is high enough to feel significantly warmer, a key marker of winter breaking. In summary, while the astronomical spring begins in late March, nature often dictates that early spring season begins in February.
That's right. The early spring begins at that time. So we heard about this cross-quarter days and quarter days, and let's just get a look. Brother Job, did you want to say anything about what you hear? Still, you can give a couple of comments if you
no,
wish.
these are good things to define so that we know what they are, and that when February rolls around, now you can become more observant to these things like the daylight and the things that are in nature, animal patterns and the growth of certain vegetations and trees and things like that. These things will help you see the early signs of spring in February.
You'll even see ants and termites by February. They're coming out, or coming out, and they're even starting now. If so, you might see one or two in your home if you leave, because they're out there beginning to see what's going on for their harvesting.
That's right. Cross-quarter days and quarter days. The term cross-quarter refers to 4 specific days that fall approximately at the midpoints between the quarter days, the 2 solstices, and the 2 equinoxes of the solar year. Quartering the year. The solstices and equinoxes divide the 12-month solar year into 4 equal quarters. Crossing the quarters. These midpoints cross each of those 4 quarters, effectively creating an 8-part year.
Okay, continue.
In solar-based seasonal reckoning, the 4 major astronomical events, the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices, are treated as the midpoints of the respective seasons rather than their beginnings. This approach aligns with the actual amount of sunlight or insolation the Earth receives.
You see that? And all of this information, as you can tell, mostly this information of nature and stuff like that, I got off on the internet and asking the internet specific questions about certain things, and I was able to produce things that I know are true. And if there's any errors within these reads, I'll let you know. And of course, we're going to hear them talk again about this Earth 23.5 degrees. But again, notice the actual amount of sunlight that the Earth receives, the whole Earth. You understand?
Yes. How solar seasons work. The Earth's 23.5 degree axial tilt causes varying amounts of sunlight to strike different parts of the planet or the Earth as it orbits the sun.
See, all of that is folly. You understand? But they're
That's
going
right.
to, they have to use it. They have nothing else to use.
The quarter days. The solstices and equinoxes represent the 4 quarter days. In a solar system, these are the peaks of light or darkness. The cross quarter days. The actual start of each solar season occurs roughly 6 to 7 weeks before the equinox or solstice at points called cross quarter days, like February 1st for spring.
All right. So let's see how this looks. Here's the first cross quarter day, February 1st. And this is how they're understanding of this, attached to the solar cycle and how they have it quarter. So as it moves through, we know it's Jazz New Year. It moves through. We get to the spring equinox. And we get to the spring equinox here. That's mid-spring. We get to the second cross quarter day and May 1st. That's summer starting. Midsummer, as you heard us talk a lot about, the summer solstice is midsummer, around June 21st. That's the definition of it. You see where it's at. The next cross quarter day is when autumn truly starts, August 1st. Autumn, the midpoint, autumn equinox, September 22nd. The next cross quarter day is November 1st, the beginning of winter when it starts. And then the next one is midwinter, December 21st. And this is how things go on. So you're seeing a cross quarter day is referring to God's true beginning, where they divide, from here to here is a quarter, and from here to here is a quarter. Even though from here to here is a quarter too, but because that's the standard that they use this as the quarter days that mark their beginning of their quarters, and these are the cross quarters. And the cross ones establish the quarters as the mid. You understand?
Yes. So in essence, in the solar season reckoning, the 4 cross quarter days represents the 4 beginnings of the 4 seasons.
That's right. Quarter 1 right here for spring, quarter 2 for summer, 3 or 4 and 3, they probably put the numbers wrong, but as you go around, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. First cross quarter. This is what many would consider the first stirrings of spring. The ewes are beginning lactation in preparation for spring lambs.
And of course, the ewes mean the pregnant mothers, the mothers, right? The women.
Yes. In some ancient cultures, this would be the time to start preparing and blessing tools for the upcoming planting. Nowadays, some people are starting their indoor seeds for spring planting. The first quarter, the spring equinox or mid-spring. By this time, spring is well underway. In Christian cultures, people are celebrating Easter. There's probably green on the trees and cherry blossoms.
So this is why when you see these things, spring is well on their way, and this is why it appears like spring, because it's moving. It's not just one day, like I said. And remember, the first cross quarter day, ABIB, and then getting to the first quarter, that's going to be about 45 days, because it said 6 to 7 weeks. So 6 times 7 is 42, 7 times 7 is 49, giving you around 45. And remember, in a season, there's about 90 to 91 days on average, right? 91 days, and half of 90 or 91 is 45. So it lets you can see that, 6 weeks to 7 weeks is before. And this is why, again, the world is able to trick us and say, hey, look, you see it, because no one's really looking at things when it's raining and kind of cool. Nobody's on a general thing is paying attention, especially when we've been zombied down. You're not even going to begin to look for it. As far as you're concerned, it's winter, like I know it is winter. That's where the trick can come in of the long winter season, but it makes you feel like it's like, still going through really winter, and winter won't change until March 21st. And that's the deception.
That's right. So the first quarter is really the middle of spring. And this is why, like Sean is saying, spring is evidently obvious by this time because it already started about a month and a half earlier.
That's right. And you got to look for those early beginnings, right? It's like a little baby, you know, when a baby's born, it's so tiny you can't even see. It comes from a sperm, and then, you know, it's only after time where you get to see the growth. Let's go to the second cross quarter,
which is equivalent to the month of May, or as we say, Judah. This is the time of flowers and maypoles. The cottonwood trees are attempting to suffocate me. The second quarter, which is the summer solstice. The sun is at its strongest. The days begin to shorten rather than lengthen. The third cross quarter, equivalent to the month Ethanim, or in the Gregorian calendar, August. This marks the beginning of autumn, the harvest season, particularly for grains. The third quarter, which is the autumn equinox, harvest season continues. Apples are ripe and ready to pick.
So again, you know, it's looking at it. You see when it says in particular, you know, and if you check out maypole, that's when they do it. The summer begins. These are things you can check out. It says the second quarter, the summer solstice, the sun is at its strongest and longest, but then the days begin to shorten rather than lengthen. So you think about it. When they say summer begins, it's the first day of summer and it's the longest day of the year. And it's like, yeah, but the days are getting shorter. But it doesn't mean that the temperature is not there, because the temperature, again, it lags a little bit as well. And this is why June 21st or the summer solstice, it's never the hottest day of the year. Never. It doesn't do that. That's usually in July and August. You understand? Where's the middle point of the year, going into July and August. Those are the hottest 2 months of the year, mostly around the earth, especially in the northern hemisphere. So again, you're seeing, you know, autumn harvest beginning, and then the autumn equinoxes, it continues. And apples, everybody picks apples at that time anyways. Go ahead.
Right. Fourth cross quarter, equivalent to November, or as we say, the month Tebeth. Many cultures are celebrating Halloween, All Saints' Day, or Samhain. It's a time of dying as the leaves change and fall. The winter solstice. This is when many northern cultures are celebrating their big winter holidays. It's also when the sun is at its weakest and the longest night of the year before the days begin to lengthen.
So again, you know, information, you know, you may know or not know already. Andrea says if we don't pay attention, we miss the signs of the seasons. Definitely true.
That's right.
You know, especially when people have you look at it at the wrong times. So again, when we're looking at this, and these are the festivals that, you know, they're so-called pagans, and they were pagans. Anything that's not just things, you can call it that way. But they celebrated a thing called Imbolic, right? These are things you can look up yourself. Beginning of February, the equinox is there. Beltane is the beginning of summer. Then you have the summer solstice, midsummer, it's called. Then you have Lamas or Lahogid, it's a funny word, beginning of August. Autumn equinox, Samhain, or it's pronounced even Samhain, end of October. And this is where you get your Halloween. Halloween is just an end of the harvest festival. That's what Halloween is. And All Saints' Day, and that's why November 1st is the beginning of winter for those who know Jazz Almanac, because Halloween is it's like everything is coming to its death time and the beginning of the dead.
That's right. And this goes to show you that many ancient cultures and peoples in time past were well aware of the true beginning of the seasons.
Very true.
The only difference is that they put their own worship of their gods and special celebrations on those days.
That's right. But they knew the true divisions of the year, right?
That's right.
Because, you know, when you see this as 4, but now when you see with jazz things, that's what they talk about, 8 divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're just taking 4 long things and dividing in 2. And just like how you can take jazz 6 months, winter season or summer season, and you could, you know, divide those into 2 as well. So again, you know, you can say the beginning, you have your cross quarter, your quarter. You have your next cross quarter in May, right? Or Judah. Then you got your quarter. You got your third cross quarter, your third quarter, and then you got the beginning of the month would be your fourth cross quarter and your fourth quarter. You understand? But these are the middle.
Cultural and historical origins. The Celtic calendar. For the ancient Celts, those cross-quarter days, Imbolc in February, Beltane in May,
Yeah, Lugnasad. That's the one. Lugnasad.
Lugnasad in August, and Samhain in November were the primary festivals and marked the beginning of each season rather than the middle. So you see how they had their own festivals that marked the beginning of the true seasons.
That's right.
Agricultural signpost. These days were critical for farming. For example, Imbolc in February signaled the start of the lambing season, while Lugnasad in August marked the beginning of the autumn harvest. Christianization. As Europe became Christianized, these dates were often aligned with religious holidays like Candlemas, February 2nd, May Day, May 1st, Lammas, August 1st, and All Hallows or Halloween on November 1st.
So what's just happened is that the names have been changing for these times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it used to always be called All Hallows, and then of course you see the Hallows, and Halloween means hallowed evening, right? That way, but they change these names, but they know. I mean, they have Candlemas February 2nd, and also about Groundhog's Day, right? It's something
Right.
that these days put, and even though those are pagan things, they're based upon natural phenomena.
That's right. And speaking of groundhogs, the animal comes out of the ground because it knows that that's the beginning of spring.
That's
It's not
right.
coming out of the ground to look at its own shadow and talk about, well, 3 or 4 more weeks we have, and then
Mhm.
spring starts.
No.
That's something that the people have put on it as some type of like
Superstition
mythology
and
or superstition.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah, and all those kind of things. But they knew that the groundhog, it goes into hibernation. Many animals go into hibernation in November, and they come out in February. And if it's too cold, they'll stay in. You know what I mean? They're smart,
That's right.
but they'll wake up. Their first wake up will be at that time.
That's right.
So when they were talking about these, you can see these different time periods. Winter's November 1st for the Irish seasons. That's what the Gaelic and everything. All Saints Day. The end date it goes from November 1st to January 31st. Then spring begins February 1st, St. Brigid's Day, and all the other names you've heard to the end of April, right? And that's the same thing with the latter rains. The latter rains are in February and they end in April. The early rains begin in November and end in January and continue for this 6-month period here. And then you got summer beginning in May Day, around the 1st of May. These are their dates, even though the dates will change, not by much, to the end of July. Then 1st of August, you have Lugnasad until 31 October, Halloween, when they ending off and they're going into the dark half of the year. Again, just good understanding to see things, right? That there's actual calendars and people understood things, right?
Mm-hmm. Modern recognition. In 2026, many familiar traditions remain tied to these dates. Groundhog's Day on February 2nd, derived from the cross-quarter day Imbolc, it remains a cultural ritual for predicting the end of winter. Halloween on October 31st, the modern descendant of Samhain, marking the transition into the dark half of the year.
That's right.
Which
Because
we know is
November 1st is going to be winter, right?
That's right.
Beginning winter. We know this. I mean, if you just divide your 24-hour day into a year, we have in the dark part relating, as a pattern, seed time, cold, winter, night, darkness, and evening. All of these occur. And then you have the summer harvest, the heat, the summer, the day, the light in the morning. They're referring to, summer and autumn. And as you could see, one half of the year, the winter would be the dark part. The other half of the year, 6 months. Again, this is not talking about ABIB first. This is talking about just the division of winter and summer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? When winter begins, you have spring is included in the winter area, and just like how autumn is included in the summer area. It's 6 months. This is the beginning where it starts going up, going to the solstice and going around, or not even solstice. This is actually May, right? August, November. So again, I just want to show you with this diagram how, this, you look at it at a year, and it can also let you know, again, related to the summer and winter seasons.
That's right.
6 months each.
Right. So you split that 12 months of the year in half, and you have 6 months of winter and 6 months of summer.
That's
Winter
right.
represents the dark, cold part of the year. Summer represents the dry, heat, or light part of the year, where the sun carries the swing of the seasons, and in the winter, now the moon carries the swing of the winter months.
That's right, brother. Even when we look at the word for winter or rainy season, satav, it says winter or rainy season, as we know, and when that begins. But it says winter as the dark season, right?
Dark season.
Again, just making everything, connecting all these things. When you take a look at Jah's almanac, and I'm not going to get into all of this in detail at all, but you have, we call from Abib to April the latter rains. You have your festivals in there, right? You have your what's going on, the comment, latter rains. You got your 6 months from May through to October, dealing with the first 3 months is early summer. And then late summer is autumn, starting in August, according to Ethanim. And you just 6 months of dry, no rain. And then you got the early rains right here coming in November. And they're called the early rains because this is where the rainy season starts. Even though this is the beginning of the year, but when you look at the calendar, it lets you know that, hey, well, the rains actually started in November, but this is just the beginning of the latter rains. And you have your festivals here. So again, just looking at the two divisions. Let's get into a video, just so you can get a little bit of an understanding of solar seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. Here's one of them.
Last time we checked out astronomical and meteorological seasons, but this time we will check out solar seasons. Solar seasons are actually based on insolation or solar radiation, where the solstices and equinoxes are viewed as the midpoints of the season. Solar seasons change about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of the meteorological seasons and about 6 to 7 weeks ahead of the astronomical seasons. And the best way to explain the seasons when it comes to solar is to look at a chart here involving the insolation at various latitudes in the northern hemisphere, starting off with the equator, 30 degrees north, 60 degrees north, and 90 degrees north. And we're mostly going to focus on the 30, 60, and 90 degree latitudes here when it comes to the increasing and decreasing amounts. So let's first start off here when it comes to spring, which consists of increasing insolation or solar radiation. And that's depicted here in the green for the months of February, March, and April. And you can already tell that those three areas, those three lines are actually beginning to increase. And it's with the equinox being at the midpoint of that solar spring. Now we move on into summer, where we see the months of maximum insolation or solar radiation, and that's depicted here in the red, and that happens throughout the months of May, June, and July. Now we start going in the opposite direction here as we start going into autumn here, and that actually begins in August, September, and October as we start seeing decreasing amounts of insolation or solar radiation. So you can already see how it's already hit its maximum in the summer, and now it's beginning to see that downward trend. And then lastly, in the blue there, we have winter, whereas the minimum insolation, and that actually happens in the months of November, December, but also in the months of January. And that is all when it comes to solar seasons.
Yes, good explanation.
Very good explanation. And so we're going to get a few more of those, but again, taking a look. So we have here on this chart here, this is the length of hours. Just what he explained, February starting right here at this point. And then we have from this point going all the way up. We passed the spring equinox. We're going up until the beginning of May. And again, look at that increase from here all the way up. Right? And so this is why it talks about the greatest increase is between February going to May, but it's going all the way up. Now, when it gets to May, this is where we have the maximum amount of sunlight, right? The maximum of sunlight. And so at May, we have it's at its highest point, and then it's going to even its peak, which is the summer solstice. As you can see, between May and August, summer solstice is in the middle. It's the middle of the summer season, it being the height of the summer, and then it comes down and matches. And then, after you have that maximum amount, look at from here. Again, going down from here, moving down past the spring equinox, going all the way back to November, you can see that we have the greatest decrease, right? And then once it gets to November, right here, we have the most minimum. It's going from November through to December, coming over here, as you know, to January, and then January ends, February begins again.
That's right. Excellent chart, Brother Sean. And Sister Andrea says this video is very good evidence that they know the truth. And yes, they do know the truth. Those who study the seasons are well aware of these things.
That's right. I use this chart a lot, but just looking at the months from Abib, Ziph, Sivan, or February, March, and April, this is the latter rains. But do you notice with Jah's Almanac, the latter rains and everything, it matches up perfectly with the solar seasons. So we have, the hours of daylight going from 11 in February, right, going to 12 to 13, 2 hours, or so to speak, in changing from 11 to 13. Then we go with the maximum, because it says here the maximum amount of sunlight. You see it's 13, 14, and 14. Now, it's not the greatest increase. It's just, it only increases 1 hour, but you can see it stays up there for a long time. 13, 14, and 14. So if you were just to even do the adding and add 11 plus 12 plus 13, that would give you, I think, 36. And then you add 13 plus 14 plus 14, that's 28, 38, that's 41. You know what I mean? So you can see 41 hours, and then the decrease again, 13, 12, and 11. Notice it? The same numbers here, 13, 12, and 11. But it's reversed. It goes 11, 12, 13. But when it's going back now, it goes 13, 12, 11.
Yes,
and then it even goes back now when it comes to the early rains in November, Tibet, the 10th month. The minimum amount of sunlight, it goes to 11, 10, and 10, and 10 plus 10 is 20, plus 7 is 31. So it has the least amount of sunlight, 31 hours, as opposed to 36, as opposed to 41, as getting back to 36 again. You understand?
That's a good that's good information to break down. Maybe you want to maybe add that onto the chart at some point, Sean. Those hours.
Yes. So again, you can see the equinoxes and the solstices are the middle. Equal days, 12 hours. For the other autumn equinox, you got your 12 hours. The midsummer is 14 hours, the longest day. And then midwinter, it's the shortest time, 10 hours.
Yes.
So again, brethren, as a rehash, we're almost done here for this introduction part to solar seasons.
Earth's solar seasons. Solar winter, the darkest part of the year, from early November to early February, defined by the least amount of daylight. Solar spring, from early February to early May. This period sees the fastest increase in daylight hours.
It springs forward, right?
That's right. Solar summer, the brightest quarter, from early May to early August, with the most daylight. Solar autumn, the period between solar summer and winter, marked by decreasing daylight.
So it's, you see, we're going through class right now. I want to make sure you understand these things, right? And, I know me and Brother Devin never talked about cross quarter days and quarter days. You might have read about it, but now you know about it. You know what I mean? And now you even know what it means. And it's like,
and it makes sense. It makes sense.
It's so good to have that information so that when you're doing your own research, you don't get lost in all of this calendrical language that you might not be familiar with. And there's a lot of calendrical language that we might have to learn at times.
That's right. And so what's happening is we are becoming familiar with these terminologies, as some people say in the world, jargon. And the more you become familiar with things, when you come across it again, now it'll give you a greater understanding of these things, and you won't be ignorant to these things anymore.
That's right. So again, remember months 1, 2, and 3, which is ABIB, Ziv, Sivan. They have the fastest 3-month increase from 4 to 6, 3 months of maximum sunlight. Months 7 to 10, again, that decrease, the opposite of up here. And then 3 months of minimum sunlight, months 10, 11, 12, Tibet, Sabbath, and Adar, or November, December, and January. And, I didn't put those any names on it, just so you can kind of just look at it in a numerical way. And that's sometimes even a good way to understand things. And then you just let the names fall where they have to, right? All right. So since we are, where are we at now? Yeah, we're going to just do an intro to solar spring. And then we are going to leave, the rest. But we'll just do the intro for the next 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, Brother Javid?
All right.
All right. So we know about these things, but remember, we're learning the details about each one now.
Mm-hmm. Solar spring. Solar spring is a specific 3-month period, roughly between February 5th to May 4th, when daylight increases at the fastest rate of the year, marking the transition from the darkest time, the solar winter, towards the longest days of summer, a concept used by climatologists to track light patterns, unlike astronomical spring, equinox, or meteorological spring from March 1st to May 31st. It signifies the quickest gain in daily sunlight, bringing increased brightness and warmth. Key characteristics of solar spring: 1. Fastest daylight gain. This is the main feature, with days lengthening by several minutes daily, as noted by the Boston Globe. The dates generally runs from early February around the 5th to early May around the 4th. Part of solar seasons. It's one of 4 solar seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall, defined by light, explained by the News Journal.
These little nuggets here and there, defined by light, sun. You can see how the sun has a big play in the seasons, right? And when it's talking about astronomical, they keep talking about the Earth's tilt. But when you get into talking about solar seasons, about light and the sun and the heat and everything, I mean, that's a great sign for us.
That's right. Solar seasons versus other seasons. Astronomical seasons, based on Earth's position, defined by solstices and equinoxes. Example, spring starts with the spring equinox in March. Meteorological seasons, fixed 3-month periods. Example, March, April, and May, for easier record keeping. Solar seasons, defined by daylight patterns. Solar spring has the fastest daylight gain. Solar summer, the most daylight. Solar fall, the quickest loss of light. And solar winter, the least light. Why it matters? Solar spring highlights the significant shift in daylight after the darkest days, influencing mood, energy, and the start of a new growth, even before the traditional astronomical spring begins, notes the News Journal.
You see, I'm getting this information from things that people know. They know these things out there, and it's true. People talk about the circadian rhythm, and I'm always into I don't know how to use it. I like to tune myself into just true seasons, whether that's proper with the sun or not. But knowing that spring is and February where it is as the beginning of the year, it's almost like it's a better time to try to start making certain goals and plans and certain things in a proper way to be in tune with the seasons. Rather, of course, January is messed up, and then people are going to do it in March and April and try to do the same thing. But here we can see, just the energy growing. And those who know about the solar energy, and you have the winter blues, seeing February come up on the scene, it should be happy for some people, because a lot of people, they need that vitamin D, you understand? And
That's right.
knowing that it's coming is a great sign of this spring, rather than just, again, looking out one day for just the birds and the flowers to be all in bloom.
Several cultural
Yep, go ahead.
and several cultures and traditions, primarily in the Northern Hemisphere, mark February as the beginning of spring or the first signs of the season's return. These celebrations often coincide with the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, also known as a cross-quarter day. 1. Celtic and Gaelic cultures practice symbolic or St. Brigid's Day, when February 1st, sometimes celebrated to sunset on February 2nd. Significance: historically celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. Symbolic marks the first stirrings of spring, lambing season, and the return of light.
You see those three things there? You know what I mean?
Yes. Traditions: it is a time for spring cleaning, making Brigid's crosses from straw to protect homes, and honoring the goddess or their Saint Brigid.
That's the pagan things. But notice it says spring cleaning there. And again, we know that in February, mid-February, is when we're supposed to have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you're supposed to clean out all the leaven out of your house. Spring cleaning.
That's right. That's right. In modern context, it is a major holiday in neo-paganism and Wicca, known as one of the 8 Sabbats.
So I know, again, all this pagan stuff, but I'm just trying to let you know that there's times, these things, as Brother Jabba said, they know of certain times, periods, because these things are apparent. It's not about us worshiping Saint Brigid or anything like that. They just know these true things. Because all throughout the year, even during jazz festivals and everything, the pagans are always going to celebrate things and cover up jazz things. So you can't get away from that. It doesn't matter what month, they're always going to throw in their things. But when you start taking back the layers, you start to see that it's based upon original fundamentals from the origination of time.
That's right.
So, taking a look at this, you have the seasons and midpoints explained. So we have the season, we have the starting point or the cross quarter day. Now that we know what that is, we have the solar midpoint, and we have the ending point. So we see spring, February 1st, 1 to 4th, symbolic. March equinox, equal day and night. That's the midpoint. That's the solar midpoint, right? May 5th is the ending. Summer starts May 1st to 5th. That's the solstice, the longest day, the midpoint. August, going to August, the beginning of August. Obviously, the beginning of August, dealing with autumn. Equinox again, equal day and night. That's the midpoint. Going to November 1st, winter. November, Samhain. December, solstice, shortest day. Again, the midpoint. Going to the beginning again, February 4th. So I know that these guys know God's true seasons. You understand? Because these are correct. And not even that, these are correct even according to the land of Israel in the summer and winter seasons and the Holy Bible that we proved in the last two lessons, and we prove a lot. So I hope you go check the description below for parts 1 and 2, and you'll see exactly how the ABIB, the barley, the wheat, the rainy seasons, all of these things match up perfectly with the solar seasons and the scriptural identity of these seasons. I can only continually say perfectly, in that way.
Yes, that's right.
So, we're going to leave it here because, we'll get into the Chinese culture. Even they understand, even though they use a lunar calendar, they know the true seasons, right? And Japanese cultures, other cultures. But I want us to leave you with flavor. I'll probably show this video again on the Sabbath, but this is solar spring, just to close off a 2-minute video. Okay.
All right.
We had solar seasons. Now this compilation is just only solar spring.
Happy solar spring. You've probably started to notice days getting a bit longer, and we are at that time of year when we gain daylight faster than any other time of year, and it's called solar spring. Now here's another way to interpret this. This line right here represents the length of our days, the lowest in the winter time and the most daylight in the summer. Now we are here We're at that time of year when we are gaining daylight the fastest, and we will continue to gain daylight at this pace until early May. We are currently gaining nearly 3 minutes of daylight per day, and in just 40 days, we will have more daylight than nighttime on March.
To talk about these winter storms coming up, snow, ice, and rain, I wanted to pause and wish you a very happy solar spring. That's right, we're in the quarter of the year, that season where we gain the most daylight. It's between now and the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. Between now and then, it's about 2 or 3 minutes a day. And in fact, by the time we reach the spring equinox, the sunset is at 7:08. And by the time we reach May 4th, 7:55 sunset. Now, this is all different than meteorological spring. That starts March 1st. And of course, astronomical spring, which will start on the 20th of March. But in the meantime, happy solar spring, more daylight ahead.
You've likely noticed the days getting longer, and anytime the sun is out, you can actually feel the radiation. And anytime the sun is out, you can actually feel the radiation. We are entering a time of year called solar spring. It's a stretch when we gain the most daylight throughout the entire year. Solar spring runs from early February to early May, during which we gain over 4 hours of daylight. This graph shows day length by month, and during this stretch between early February and early May, you can see the rate of increasing daylight is the highest. This means you'll start to notice more signs of actual spring as we close out the last few weeks of winter.
Welcome to solar spring. You may have never heard of it before, but solar seasons are based on the amount of daylight we have each day. And from today through May 4th, we will have the biggest increase in daylight through the whole year. And this is called solar spring. And you'll start to notice big changes in our atmosphere between now and May 4th. The big reason why, the sun angle. Think back to the winter solstice, the sun very low on the horizon, only 24 degrees above the horizon. But over the last couple of months, since the winter solstice, the sun has been steadily inching up a bit in the sky. Today it's at a 32-degree angle, and from now through May 4th, that will continue to go up at a very quick rate and then slow down a little bit as we approach the summer solstice when it reaches its highest point in the sky at an altitude of more than 70 degrees. It does take a little while for the temperatures to respond to this higher sunlight, though. That's why the warmest weather doesn't happen until the summer. Reason for that, all of the oceans covering the globe. If we didn't have the water that takes a while to warm up, the temperatures would more evenly match the sun angle, which is already on the way up as we speak. But that said, you'll probably start to notice in these next several days the later and later sunsets. Today, 5:10 in the evening, February 21st, 5:30 in the evening, and then we spring forward on March 10th, and the sunset will be nearly 7 p.m. By the way, the sun rises tomorrow morning, the first one before 7 in the morning. I'm meteorologist Ryan Breton, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
Those are good compilation of clips.
Yes, great compilation. And, as always, all thanks and praise to Jah, our Father, and his Son, Jehoshua the Messiah, the Nazareth that died for our sins, that we may have eternal life. I want to thank everybody, for watching today's lesson. And as you can see, we're gearing up, and I'll have videos for every part of the year, whether it's for all cross, quarter, and quarter days. We have videos proving every part just to make sure. And of course, we'll add in other information. But now you've seen we have a lot of information already. I've shown a lot, something for you to do your own research on. And I pray that the Most High strengthen you in the Messiah's love.
Yes, praise Jah.
So bless up to all the brothers and sisters tonight. Auntie Elma, Mama Greg, Zion Assembly family, Sister Carice, Johnny, and family. That's a lesson. I hope that you learned something. I know you always learn something, but I think because we focus in a slow way, it's going to now make you really recognize these things. And I pray that Jah open up all of our eyes more clear to his almanac.
Yes.
Olivia, bless you. Well, yes. Johnny, yes, yeah, man. So bless up, everyone. One love to you, Brother Javid. Thanks again.
Give thanks, Brother Sean.
And it's only going to get better, as well. I'm glad, because me, I like to, sometimes I shouldn't do it all the time, but I always like to save the best things for last.
Yeah, man. This is great information to share with the brethren and sisters. And the more we go over these things, the more we'll remember these things, and these things will stick and stay in our minds.
Yes, that's right, brother. Yeah, man. Bless up, everyone. Have a good rest of the week. And Jah will see you Sabbath, 4 o'clock. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, to send it to the algorithm. Our videos are catching on a lot, especially on this topic. And if you want to put a comment in, subscribe, and hey, share it with others if you want. And I know, they're kind of long, but hey, chew it piece by piece.
That's right. That's right.
Bless up, Sister Andrea.
Thanks.
All right, Lion.
All right. Bless up, Sean, all the brothers and sisters, and have a good night and a good rest of the week.
Yes, you too.
One love.
One love.